In order to build something, in order to renovate or make new, in order for homes, towns, cities to grow, there is a need for tools. Without the right tools, houses cannot be formed or updated, materials cannot be easily gathered, and growth is stopped short in its tracks. Have you ever wondered why you don't seem to be growing in your faith? Why does God feel far away? Why do I keep getting tripped up and brought down by the same things over and over again? It's time to shake up this ground, to break down these walls, to sharpen up and to surrender. It's time to sharpen up our tools. Good morning. How great was that? I told the 9 a.m. That I felt like I was in the movie Sister Act, and I thought it was really good. But I was also thinking now that I feel like it's an expectation now to have a choir every single weekend, guys. So I feel like if you guys want to join the choir permanently, please, we'd love to have it every week. It's good. But I hope that you guys have had a good week. And the topic that we're going to be talking about today is something that I'm really passionate about. And I think it's a topic, like with everything that we've talked about over the past couple of weeks, that's a little bit underrated and a little bit sometimes misunderstood. But before I go into that, I want to do a little throwback, okay? For some of you guys, you might not know who these people are, but if you don't, I'm going to explain it to you. It's these guys. Who has seen these guys before? Does everyone know these guys? Yeah? If you don't, that's okay. I'll explain it to you. This handsome fellow over here with the scary eyes is Edward Cullen from the Twilight series. Yeah. He was he's a good-looking guy. But the thing that the girls really loved about him was like the smolder that he had. He always had this look of like, and he was very serious. This is Jacob Black from the Twilight series as well. He was the werewolf, and he always had his shirt off. And he had an 8-pack, and all the girls were like, "Oh my goodness, you are so beautiful." And then they looked at me and they go, "Why don't you have one?" And I was like, "Well, I'm 14, so I don't have one." And then of course, good old JB. This is the early years Justin Bieber. This is the baby, baby, baby. Oh. I'm going to join your family, guys. We're going to tour the world. Anyway, this is Justin Bieber, right? And we know this. And the thing that they all had in common was they had a fan club, and it was the girls in my high school, all right? The girls in my high school, they loved these guys. They knew everything about them. They knew who they were dating. They knew what they ate. They knew what they liked. They knew where they lived, which is creepy. They knew the cars that they drove. They knew everything about them. And it got to the point where it was like they worshipped the ground that they walked on, right? And so I'm there as a 14, 15-year-old guy going like, "Hey, man, what about me, right? Am I not like Justin Bieber?" No, apparently not. Anyway, these guys, they came to a point where they kind of like worshipped them. But this is my generation people, right? Oh, yeah, my generation people. But this has been around for a long time. Who's a fan of Robbie Williams here? Yeah, Robbie Williams? Okay, cool. Now, Robbie Williams, he had a big fan club, and they went crazy, right? What about the Beatles? Queen, Bon Jovi, John Bon Jovi, right, as was said before? All these guys had one thing in common, and this was a massive fan club. And these guys, they all had people that went to the extremes, and it was like they worshipped them. Have you seen like the concert footage of the Queen concerts? They're singing along to the songs. They have their hands raised. It's crazy. It's amazing. It's wow, right? People would listen to their music. They would talk about them all the time. They would try and figure out more details about their life, who they were as people, their character, what they liked and disliked. And then what they would do with that is that they would align their likes and their dislikes to them, right? Some of these people, they get tattoos of their faces on their calf muscle, right? I've seen one of the Rock, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, right? But these are some pretty extreme examples. But these people do exist, right? Maybe we know someone that's like that. You're like, oh no, my goodness, right? But these people exist. And maybe for us here, maybe we're not like them, okay? Maybe we don't walk around in the world with a t-shirt on with their faces or the thing or whatever it is on it going like, I'm so proud of this. This is something that I worship, okay? Maybe for us, maybe it's a little bit more subtle than that. Maybe it's a little bit more on the down low. Maybe it's a habit. Maybe it's an addiction. Maybe it's a perspective that we have. Maybe it's an ideal that we wish we had. Right? Maybe it's a person. Maybe it's our finances or lack of finances. Maybe it is the perfect life. Right? Because the thing that we're going to talk today about is worship. Right? For some of us, we hear the word worship and it makes us uncomfortable. It leaves a bad taste in our mouth. It makes the hairs on the back of our neck stand up because our understanding of what worship is has a negative spin on it, right? We look at worship, or we've known previously what worship is about, and we have this negative idea about it. It is like, I have to kiss the feet of the king, right? I have to be the slave that worships the master. And we don't want to be the slave. We want to be the master. We don't want to worship. We want to be worshiped. That's maybe some of us here. For some of us, we hear the word worship and we're confused a little. We're like, so sorry, Jordan, worship is not just singing? It's like, no, it's not just singing. For some of us, we think that worship, all we know of what worship is that it's singing at church for 20 minutes, 30 minutes on a Saturday or Sunday. We think that worship and song are the same thing. That singing songs equals worship at church, and that worship equals singing songs. And so what we do is we lump worship into one category. We say it's a genre of music, and that's all it is, right? And it's good, because that's what it is. I mean, worship is song, but that is only one part of what worship is. And actually, it's only one part of what God intended worship to actually be, right? For some of us here, we hear the word worship and we go, this has absolutely nothing to do with me at all. I don't believe in this God thing. I don't care about this God thing. Actually, I don't even know why I'm here, but I am for some reason, right? So this doesn't apply to me, but I'm here and I'm listening. But I want to challenge us today. I want to challenge us to shift our perspective on what we think worship is and what culture has created worship to mean, okay? And so I have this statement, and some of you guys are not going to like this statement, but I'm going to say it anyway. This is what it says. It says, we are created to worship, and it is everything that we do every day. We were created to worship, and it is everything that we do every day. I can feel there's like I don't know how I feel about that, Jordan. Right? So I'm asking you for this. Let's for a moment, okay, believe that this statement is true. That whatever issues that you may have with it, whatever confusion that may surround it, whether or not you think that it is for you and it applies to you, let's for a moment, this moment, the next little while, believe with all of who we are that this statement is true. Because if we believe that this statement is true, and if we are truly created to worship, and it is everything that we do every day, then worship should matter to us greatly. Because we are and always will be a worshiper. We can't help it. We can't stop it. It is something that we can't live without. We do it on a daily basis with all these other things in the world. But what we can do is choose where to invest it. Because the reality is this, okay? Is that we don't always have God at the top place of our hearts. God is not always like that. God is not always there. Because throughout our entire lives, there will be things that take top spot in our hearts. Throughout our entire lives, there will be things and people, whatever it might be, where we invest our time, we invest our energy, we invest our thoughts, we invest our finances, we invest our emotions, we might invest our bodies into it. And so those things take top spot in our heart. They're number one. And we push God down to 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? We worship it. For some of us here, it might be that the girl or the guy that we started dating recently, right? They're my world. They're so fantastic. They can do no wrong, right? They're the greatest thing. And so we elevate that. It might be the new job that we started, right? Hey, I need to invest my time and my energy, my thoughts, maybe my emotion, maybe my body into this new job. And so this new job needs to take top spot, right? For us, it might be the business that we started or that we're running. Hey, that takes a lot of our time, a lot of our energy, a lot of our thoughts, a lot of our emotion. And so it takes top spot. For some of us, it might be ourselves. We think we're all that. Hey, I'm number one, right? But this is a problem. Because what starts to happen when those things that we worship, that we put in the top place of our heart, when God is not there, is that it changes our heart. It changes the way that we think. It changes the way that we interact. It changes the way that we perceive the world, and we start to actually become like the world. It changes us. But the change is often not for the better. And God has a real issue with that. Because for God, He wants us to have life, not have life taken away from us. But not only that, He wants us to give life to those around us. So if we are created to worship, and it is everything that we do every day, then it is incredibly important to know what we're worshiping. Because it doesn't just impact us. It impacts everyone around us. And this is not the first time, or this is not something that we just experienced today. It's not something that appeared out of nowhere 10 years ago, right? This has been our journey throughout forever, since we've been created, right? Because within the Bible, what we call the Old Testament, there's a story of this king called Saul. And Saul, before he became king, his heart for God was so there. He loved God with all of who he was. Everything that he did every day was for God. And so God made him a king, and then as he stepped into that kingship, and as he was leading, over time, his heart changed. God was not in the top spot anymore. Power and riches, they took top spot. And then eventually he started worshiping other gods from the countries around him. And so when that happened, God goes, okay, well, I need to replace him. Let me replace him. And he brings this man called David that becomes a king. Right? And for some of us, we know David. He's the guy that flung the stone and Goliath falls and dies, right? Dramatic. If you don't know it, I'll go through it with you. It's great. But David comes along, and from the get-go, David's heart is for God. It's so for God that at the end of his life, God actually calls him a man after his own heart. How awesome is that? We see this. As David transitions from a boy to a king, we see that this does not change at all. His heart is for God and God alone. Everything that he does every day is for God and God alone. David is so concerned with the position of his heart and whether it is focused on worshiping God at every moment with all of who he is and with everything that he did. Because for David, he knew that he was created for worship. He knew that worship was not just singing songs. And this is the same David that wrote a part of the book, part of the Bible called Psalms. And some of these songs that we're singing, they're inspired by this guy. He was a lyricist. He sang songs and he danced and he played guitar and stuff like that. And even David knew that it wasn't just about singing. Even David knew that the words that were coming from his mouth, it wasn't just about that. But it was the way that he did everything every day. It was the way that he lived his life, which was true worship. Okay? For David, worship was about giving all of who he was to God. Because anything less than that was not enough. And why? Why would he do this? Because David had experienced God. David had experienced God provide for him. David had experienced God shelter him. David had experienced God guide him. David had experienced God protect him. David had experienced God win battles for him. And David had experienced God prosper him. And he knew that in order to truly worship God, in order to be truly thankful and to remind himself that it was only through God that he was where he was, that everything that he did every day was the only appropriate response. So, what about us? Why should this be relevant to us? Because for some of us, we might be sitting here thinking, Jordan, this is great, all right? Fantastic. But God hasn't done anything for me to deserve my worship. He doesn't deserve it at all. And I want to challenge you on that. Because you're not the first people to say this. There was a church in Rome that were thinking very similar thoughts along the lines of you guys, that you might be thinking. And so there's this man, Paul, and he wrote part of what we call the New Testament. And within the New Testament, there's a bunch of letters. And so this is written as a letter to the church in Rome. And so he writes to these guys, and this is what he says. He says this, "Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy." He's saying, guys, I'm pleading with you. Please look, brothers and sisters, and see what God has done for you in view of God's mercy. Paul is saying here, hey, to this church, to these people, if you have ever experienced God's mercy in your life, then the best way that we can give thanks for what God has done is with all of who we are. Everything that we do every day. So for us, maybe we've experienced God actually bringing us mercy. For us, maybe we've actually experienced God providing for us in some way. For us, maybe we've experienced God protecting us, maybe guiding us. Maybe for some of us, we've experienced God by Him bringing us into a community where we are loved, where we're needed, and we're known. Maybe for some of us, we've experienced God bringing people into our lives so that we don't have to do life alone. Maybe we've experienced God strengthening us. Maybe we've experienced God coming through at a time where a family member is in hospital. Maybe we've experienced God when He didn't come through with that family member in a hospital, but He actually comforts us. And He brings us that comfort, and He's with us, and He's there with us, and He brings people around us. If you resonate with any of those things, you think of any of it, then you have viewed God's mercy. You've experienced it. Paul goes on to say, he says this, he says, to offer your body. So he's saying, hey, what did he say before? Goodness. He said, in view of God's mercy, right? Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. This is your true and proper worship. And we hear this word sacrifice and go, oh, no. No. I don't do that. So let me put it in a different way, okay? This is in a different translation. It's more contemporary. This is what he says. He says, take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work and walking around life and place it before God as an offering. He's saying to these guys, and he's saying to us, team, if we have really experienced God's mercy, if we have experienced all these different things, then we have to take everything that we do every day and worship God. Because the reality is we have been created to worship. We have been created to worship. But specifically, we have actually been created to worship God. We have been created to worship God. And I'm going to be real honest with you, okay? This is a moment of pure honesty. God does not need your worship. He doesn't need it. It's not an ego boost for him. He doesn't need it, but what he does is he asks for it. He asks for it because of what he offered to us. He offered his life so that we could have life. He offered all of who he is, or was, to take all that was not worthy in us, to make us worthy, to place us back where we belong, which is right next to him, as co-heirs with the King. We worship because it reminds us of all that God has done, but that's not it. And continues to do, but even that's not it. What God will do, but even that's not it. And what he can do. We worship because it reminds us of all that God has done, continues, will, and can do in our lives. Worship has never just been about singing and the music. I'm going to read it because I don't want to miss it out. Worship has never been just about the singing and the music. Worship has never just been for those that call themselves Jesus followers, for those of us that believe. Worship has always been for everyone because we were created to worship. Worship has always been our entire lives. Everything that we do, every day. And why? Because God wants our hearts to be close to him. The words that we sing and we say, the things that come from our lips, should be matched by the way that we live. There's a moment in the book of Matthew, which is found in the New Testament and written by a guy called Matthew, where Jesus is confronted by the Pharisees and the teachers of the law. These guys knew everything about the Bible, okay? They were top-notch guys, right? But they come at Jesus and they start complaining about the fact that his disciples, his followers, didn't follow tradition of the elders. And Jesus, he loses his temper a little bit. He goes, no, stop. And he says this, and it's confronting. He says this, frauds. In other translation, he says, you hypocrites. He's not saying that to you guys. He's saying it to the Pharisees. Okay? But he says, you frauds, you hypocrites. Right? Isaiah's prophecy of you hits the bullseye. This guy that spoke ages ago spoke about you guys. And he's hitting it on the head. And he goes on, he says this. The people make a big show of saying the right thing. But their heart isn't in it. And he continues and he says, they act like they're worshiping me, but they don't mean it. Imagine hearing that. When I read that, it challenged me. Because it got me thinking straight away, well, does he have my whole heart? Is there anything that I am placing above God in my heart? Are there things that I am worshiping other than God? And are those things moving me and my heart far from him? And the reality is yes, because I'm human. But God wants our heart. Does this challenge you? What are some of the things that you may be placing above God in your heart? Right? Maybe for some of us, it's actually allowing God to enter our heart first. But for all of us, I want to ask this question. What are you worshiping? What are you worshiping? Everyone has a pedestal on which they put the thing they are worshiping on, and finding out what it is actually the easy part, okay? Changing it is the hard part. But finding out what it is actually the easiest thing, because there are 5 things that we can use to help identify where the things that we're worshiping, whether we're worshiping God or whether we're worshiping something else. And so I have a little illustration. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I have a pie. Thank you. I have a pie. And the pie is us. We are the pie, right? The first program, I totally botched this, but it was good. I pre-cut it. I've learned from my mistakes. But we are the pie. The pie is us, okay? And so these 5 things, we can easily divide and we can figure it out, because all we have to do is we got to trace these 5 things back throughout our lives to see where we're placing them in the pieces and all sorts of stuff. And then we figure out what we are worshiping, whether it is in fact God or whether it's something completely different. So the first thing is our time. We go, 1 place for God, 1 place for the other thing, okay? So, let me see if I can get this piece. Oh, yes. That's a good piece right there. Whew. Our time. I got plenty of time. I am young, I am sprightly, right? But I'm busy. My job takes all my time. My girlfriend takes all my time, right? And so my time doesn't go to God. That piece of me goes to this other thing. So our time. That's the first identifier. The second thing is our affection. It's another good piece. Look at that. Ooh, I'm going to serve pie out. Our affection. For some of us here, we're going, I love God. God is awesome. He's fantastic. And I'm part of this community, and I love it, and God is for me. And so the part of me that's my affection, that piece of me goes to God. Awesome. Brilliant. The third thing is our energy. There you go. Our energy. Whew. We look at our energy, and we say, hey, is my energy actually going towards God? Is it going towards His community? Am I a part of the community? Whatever it might be. And for some of us, it's not. And so we place it on this plate that has nothing to do with God, but the thing that we worship. Right? The next thing is our money. Now that hits a chord with some people. My money. For some of us, we hold this perspective that this money that I've gotten is actually not my money. It's God's money. And so I am going to give it back to the church so that they can do awesome things in the community. And so we place that onto the plate of God, right? And then the last thing is our loyalty. So you take that big piece. Whew, look at that. And we look at it and we go, am I actually being loyal to God? Does He have all of me? Or am I putting that piece to something else? These are 5 things that we can use to identify whether we are worshiping something else or whether we are actually worshiping God. Because the reality is this, okay? At the end of it, okay, we get to see what takes top spot in our lives. We get to see what takes top spot in our lives when we're doing something like this. And you don't have to use pies, okay? You can if you like to, but you don't have to. Because for some of us, all we need to do is we need to just look at our calendars and we see the thing that we're worshiping. For some of us, all we need to do is actually look at our bank accounts. Maybe we do a bit too much shopping. For some of us, all we need to do is look at our Instagram accounts. Oh, right? And we get to see what we're worshiping. Finding out what it is the easy part, all right? Now, some of us are probably sitting here and probably thinking that this guy does not want us to enjoy anything at all whatsoever. All of me has to go towards God. I can't do it to anything else. Blah, 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 blah. This sucks. This sucks. And I want to say, no. It is not a bad thing to enjoy the things that God has created. Because truly, God wants you to enjoy those things. He wants you to enjoy that girlfriend that you have, and that job that you have, and the business that you started, and all those things. He wants you to enjoy those things because He created those things. But as soon as it takes top spot in our heart, as soon as the thing that we're worshiping takes top spot and it's not God, we are cheating ourselves. And we're cheating God. We're cheating God. Because truly, when we do this, what we actually end up saying to God is this: God, all that you have done for me, all right, all that you do for me, and all that you continue and will do for me means absolutely nothing to me. It means nothing to me. That's what we're saying when we're saying, God, you don't have top spot in my heart. This thing does. Right? Paul talked about sacrifice before. And we see that it's such an issue. Sacrifice. But what if we change our perspective in the terms of we're not sacrificing. We're not sacrificing because the reality is this, all right? When we take all these things, all the pieces of who we are, from the thing that we are worshiping, all right, and we place it to God, we give it to God, and we say, God, you have all of me. Everything that I do every day, absolutely everything is yours, and we're giving it to you. You give it to God. God goes, wow, this is amazing. Here, I want you to have it. You gave me your affection, I'm going to give you affection back. You gave me your time, I'm going to give you that time back. You gave me that energy, that money, the loyalty, and I'm going to give it back. So it's not a sacrifice. Worshiping God is not a sacrifice. Worshiping God with all of who we are is not a sacrifice. Because God sees it as an investment. He's investing back into you. So what if we saw it like that? What if we gave everything of who we are to God so that He can give it back in a greater way? Right? So this is what I would like us to do. On the car ride home, at home, in the shower, in bed, I'm not fussed where you do it. Right? But I want you to do it. I want you to think about whether or not you are placing all of who you are, everything that you do every day, to God. To God. And if you're not, I want us to ask this question. At the end of that road, once we've figured it out, once we've put all the pieces together and all sorts of stuff, if we're not worshiping God and we're worshiping something else, I want us to ask this question: does it deserve to be first place in our hearts? Does it deserve to be there? Does it deserve to be there? Because the reality is, we were created to worship. We were created to worship. We were created to worship God. But it's not just song. It is everything that we do every single day. Every single day. Everything we do. We're going to sing a song now. It's an old song, but it's called The Heart of Worship. And it's powerful. It's so awesome. And these are some of the lyrics. It says, I'll bring you more than a song, for a song in itself is not what you have required. You search what's much deeper within, though the way things appear. You're looking into my heart. King of endless worth, no one could express how much you deserve. Though I am weak and poor, all I have is yours, every single breath. For me, I would love for us to be like David. I would love for us to hear God say, you guys are people after my own heart, because your heart is close to mine. Your heart is close to mine. Your heart is close to mine. Let me pray. Dear God, thank you so much that we can come together. That we can come together as this community, that we can explore this topic of worship, that we can explore all these different tools that help us get close to you, God. Lord, worship is not just about song, although it is beautiful to be singing, Lord. It is actually all of who we are every day, everything that we do, God. And I pray that as we leave today, we remember that. We identify the things that are taking this top spot in our heart, and we ask the question, does it deserve to be there? With everything that you have done for us and you continue to do and will do, does it deserve to be there? So Lord, I pray that you be with us, that you bless us, as you always do. In Jesus' name.